Is MrBeast a good marketer?
Attention spans are shorter now than they've ever been, and they keep getting shorter. If you've got 4 million views and only 12 of them are your ideal customers, are those 4 million views worth anything other than vanity? Quite literally, at the age of 18, me and my mum, my brother were made homeless. Yeah, what do you do when a fire alarm goes off? Do you want to stay in a building if it's on fire and burn with it? Or would you want to accept the fact that the thing you were doing you can't do anymore and you better get out and do something different and maybe you can come back in? You know, and suitably objective. So
that's random. That's never happened before.
Welcome to the Business Growth Podcast, powered by ActionCOACH UK, the world #1 in business coaching. Since 1993, we've helped thousands of business owners and entrepreneurs worldwide smash through their limits and achieve extraordinary results. This is more than a podcast, it's your blueprint for success. So grab a pen and paper, take notes, and make sure you hit the subscribe button and notification bell for weekly growth insights. Let's do this. ActionCOACH, the help you need to grow your business. What does it really take to grab attention, build trust, and drive sales? Well, today's guest knows better than most. Neil Martin is the Director of Marketing and Edutainment at ActionCOACH UK and an award-winning speaker and the author of Done Beats Perfect. Neil's experience ranges from corporate tenders, cold calling, to award-winning online funnels and even pitching live on TV shopping channels. I want to see that, Neil. What makes him different is how he fuses data, storytelling, and edutainment to turn marketing from a gamble into a predictable strategy. In this episode, you're going to discover why attention is the new currency, how to make every campaign data-driven, and the hidden danger that could bring down your business if you ignore it. Let's do this. This episode is sponsored by the ActionCOACH Foundation. Join ActionCOACH Foundation UK to empower young entrepreneurs with the skills to succeed in business and beyond. Whether you're an aspiring student, a passionate educator, or a generous donor, your involvement can spark innovation and opportunity. Now back to the podcast.
Yeah, cool. We're already rolling, are we? Is MrBeast a good marketer?
How's that for a question? Is MrBeast a good marketer? Come on, James, let's get real. Look at the audience he's built. Look at the following he's got. So, it's hard to answer that with anything other than yes.
So is he considered one of the world's best marketers just from what he's doing?
Well, I think a lot of it, and I think marketing in general, here's a key thing. Marketing in general, it's about being the most well-known from the people you want to attract. So is he attracting the right audience for what he's trying to do? And do they all know who he is? If he's a household name for the audience he wants, he's a great marketer. But I guarantee there are people watching this, listening to this, who have no idea who MrBeast is, and that's okay because they're probably not his target market.
Well, some of my kids are his target market, and by default, I do watch some of his stuff, and I think it's brilliant. And I learn from him, to be honest, how he transitions, how he keeps your attention. It's just, he is all over marketing and keeping the attention of his audience.
But that's such a big thing, right? So attention spans are shorter now than they've ever been, and they keep getting shorter. You know, Microsoft did some research a number of years ago now that showed that the average human attention span is now shorter than the attention span of a goldfish. Now, my only question...
was that 3 seconds?
No, it's not. It's longer than that. But my question is, how do you measure the attention span of a goldfish? How do they know it's shorter than a goldfish?
Well, surely some smart people than you and I have actually tested
somebody
this.
somewhere thinks they've figured that out, right? But the bigger thing with it is attention spans are getting shorter. So if you want attention, you've got to be able to capture it and you've got to be able to keep it. And those are two different things.
All right, let's talk about capturing attention.
Okay.
How do we do it?
So first of all, whose attention do you want to capture?
Right person.
Yeah, but who is the right, whoever's watching this, who is the right person for you? If you don't know whose attention you're trying to capture, then even if you're capturing attention, is it worth it? Yeah, all content, especially from a marketing perspective, is about the return you get on that content. It's not about, hey, I've got 4 million views. So what? If you've got 4 million views and only 12 of them are your ideal customers, are those 4 million views worth anything other than vanity?
True. So, look, capturing, it's making me think of attention-grabbing headlines and clickbait.
Yep.
And, putting something out that's dramatical, that real drama, because drama catches attention, yeah?
Yep.
And you've got to be big, bold and courageous and all that kind of thing for that.
You have and you haven't, right? So, marketing and content, like I'm going to use the words marketing and content interchangeably, right? Because they're kind of the same thing. It should be like a magnet. And if you take a magnet and you like put another magnet to it, if they're the right way around, they stick together and they're really sticky and hard to pull apart. If you flip them around the other way, it repels. And marketing is supposed to do the same thing. It should pull the audience you want and push away the audience you don't want.
Not only pull them, magnetize them.
Yeah.
That's the sticky bit, keeping them.
But this is it. It's pull them and stick them or push them away completely. And the challenge, I think, for a lot of brands, especially bigger brands, so the bigger your brand is in many ways, the harder this is how do you push the wrong audience away without offending the right audience? Because if you're too polarizing, you actually lose some of the people you want because they don't like the message you're putting out in terms of its impact on other people.
So how do you do that?
I think a lot of it's by listening carefully.
Pay attention.
Yeah, exactly. If you want attention, give attention. It's that standard law of reciprocity. If you want something given to you, put it out into the world first and it will find, like, we all know about karma and we can talk about that for hours on its own. What you put out comes back, but not always in the most obvious way.
And usually less.
Yeah.
From a marketing perspective.
But sometimes more.
Quite a lot of marketing.
Marketing in terms of what you get back. And I mean, there's so many things we could talk about around this, okay? But marketing in terms of what you get back. Think of marketing as a bit like going to the casino, only the odds are stacked in your favour. You go to the casino, it's stacked on the house, right? Marketing, it's the same kind of thing, but the odds are stacked in your favour. But the key thing is, until you place your bet, you can't win. So you've got to invest up front, not knowing with complete certainty whether what you're trying to do is going to work or, will it work, when it work, who knows?
But just a second, for all the listeners right now, check this out. Marketing is stacked in your favour.
It is, if you're paying attention. And if you're understanding the probabilities and if you're understanding your numbers, right? If you know the numbers for every campaign you've run, and that's a big if for a lot of people, but if you know the numbers, this is what I spend, this is how many leads it generates, this is how many of those marketing leads turn into sales leads, because those two things are not the same thing. This is how many of those sales leads then progress into being customers. This is how many are being retained as potential future customers, even if they don't buy right now. Like, if you understand how the numbers silo down, you then know what the cost of each of those different outcomes is. And okay, well, the next campaign I run, is it making me, is the cost working more in my favour or against me? Is the investment giving me the right kind of return? And if it is, fantastic, keep doing it. And if it's not, stop. And it's a little bit like if you go to a casino, you betting on red, you betting on black, or you betting on a specific number. Well, the more focused you are in terms of what you bet on, the smaller your chances of winning, but also your greater chance of winning big. And marketing's the same thing. What's some generalised campaigns that your chance of winning's pretty high, but you're probably not going to win big. And then, like, what's that, like, bullseye shot that you go for every now and again, where you win big, but also the risk is big, and it could backfire, and it might not work, and you might upset the market a little bit and have to rebuild some trust. And there's a delicate balance on all of that.
I like it. You heard it here, folks, first. Marketing is stacked in your favour when you're data-driven and you know your numbers.
Yeah. And you and I have had lots of conversations about this, James. The people listening won't have heard us have those conversations, but, marketing is mathematics. Everyone thinks marketing's about being a creative genius. And don't get me wrong, the creative part is really, really important. It is. But it's not the only bit that's important. Because you can come up with ideas all day long and you can execute those ideas. In fact, let me back up. A lot of people can come up with ideas all day long and never execute the ideas. So the first thing is actually executing and doing something, right? But you can execute an idea and have no idea as to whether it's working or not. An action coach thing we talk about a lot is test and measure. But, a good friend of ours has said many times that more business is measured than test. It's one thing to measure your numbers, but actually what are you testing it against?
Yeah.
Like, what's the target? What's the goal? And for me, I even like to add one more word in front of test, which is experiment. You design the experiment, test the hypothesis, measure the results. And if you do that on every single campaign, this is the experiment. This is the thing we're going to try. This is the thing we're going to play with and see if it works. Okay, great, it's working. How are we testing that it continues to work? How do we measure that? Okay, if it starts to drop off a cliff, what's the next thing?
I like it, Neil. Experiment, test, and measure. Numbers-based decision. You sound like a real marketer here. Anyone
would think I've been doing this for a few decades, right?
Well, there was someone that every listener knows that was sat in your seat once. Amazing man. It's called Nick Jenkins, the founder of moonpig.com. All right. So, and he sat in that chair and he said this phrase. I remember it vividly. Marketing genius, by the way. Utter marketing genius, Nick Jenkins. Only got good things to say about him. He said it's easier to make a mathematician a marketer than it is to make a marketer a mathematician.
Yep.
And really, you need both. You need the creative aspect. You need the numbers.
And you need the patience for both.
Interesting.
One of the interesting things about me that when I tell people this, a lot of people don't know this part of my backstory, and some don't even believe me. Okay, but I'm a computer science graduate, so all the techie nerdy stuff, like I can do that.
I can see that in you.
Yeah, because you know me, right? But a lot of people when they first meet me, they're like, "What? Hang on, like the techie IT bit." People don't. It surprises some people. The interesting thing for me is very early in my career, I realised that I prefer interacting with human beings than screens. So whilst I can do that, I don't enjoy it as much. But the fact that I can do it means I understand it, which means that I can have someone do it for me and I know the right questions to ask. Whereas there's a lot of people who get the creative piece without having a deep enough understanding of the analytics and the data and how to crunch that data. When I was first working basically as a data analyst, it was a fancier title than that, but that's essentially what the role was. There were meetings that took place where I prepared the data for both sides of an argument using the same data set. Because if you understand how to manipulate and twist numbers, you can make those numbers tell just about any story you want. Let me give you a really good example, okay? If we talk about skimmed milk versus full fat milk, okay? Skimmed milk, everyone knows, is like almost no fat in it, and so it's positioned as being like uber healthy because there's no fat in the milk. How much fat is actually in full fat milk? 4%. So if I said to you, drink milk, it's 96% fat free, it's a low fat food. So you don't even need skim milk. You can just go, it's low fat, it's 96% fat free. But we actually call it full fat milk. So we make it sound like it's full of fat to make people buy semi-skimmed or skimmed because they've got even less. And it's just clever playing on the data to tell a story.
It is. Look, it's a valid point because if you look for an angle for the data to tell something, I think a lot of businesses and individuals protect themselves from, when the numbers are, let's say, not so good. Mm-hmm. It's manipulating a way for it to sound like, oh, we've been doing this, that, and the other. How common is that?
I think it happens a lot, and I think people do it to themselves.
The kid themselves?
Yeah. And that's
denial.
100%. 100%. The best presentations, the best content, right? All content is a presentation, whether it's scripted and planned or not. It's still a presentation in some way, shape, or form. The best presentations effectively are built of two things: frameworks and stories. Frameworks and stories. That's all it is.
Yep.
A framework to a large extent is data driven, even if it's got words rather than numbers, but it's still data driven because it gives the structure, and the stories fill in the gaps. How easy is it for any area of your life right now that's not working to create a story as to why it's not working? That means it's not your fault.
Yeah, self-protection, ego protection springing to mind. Justifying things, justifying the status quo, or the challenges?
We live life between, right, two things, right? And what sits in the middle is reality. But outside of reality is catastrophe and fantasy. And if you think of life as almost being like a thermostat, what's the range on your thermostat? How far from reality are you willing to drift into catastrophe or fantasy?
Does it become a habit?
I think it does. And I think
Denial becoming a habit.
Well, I think for some people, they will actually naturally go towards catastrophe. Like, I've met so many people in my life that will tell me all the things that are going to go wrong, but they don't know that yet. But they'll tell me all the things that are going to go wrong as if they've gone wrong already, right? Then there are other people who are always so positive, they can never admit that it's gone wrong already. It's like, no, but one more thing and it'll all figure itself out. It's like the sale. I've got to be careful what I say on this because it's based on a real story. But I had a salesperson that worked for me quite a long time ago now, who was always that one deal away from justifying his existence.
Yeah, well, I'm sure the listeners all know someone like that in their lives right now.
Yeah, and the story was always so convincing that you kind of felt like, I need to give him another couple of months to prove himself.
Yeah.
But those couple of months would pass by, that deal would be gone, and there'd be another deal that was justifying his existence that hadn't come in yet. And it just rolled and rolled and rolled. And as a leader, I kind of got to the point where it's like, I can't justify having this person in the team anymore because they're costing money. They're running up expenses of business travel and all kinds, and nothing's coming from it. But the actual guy was such a nice guy and was so convincing. And it was like, if only he could convince customers in the way he convinced the team, he'd probably make some sales.
Well, he's probably got a skill there, hasn't he? So yeah, all skills are transferable if you put enough intention and action into it. So we've got on one side excessive levels of optimism, which is a form of denial, yeah?
Yep.
And then we've got on the other side this catastrophe, like a human threat detector.
Yep.
They can detect threats a mile away. And what you're saying is right in the middle is reality. So is that a nice blend of being aware of all the downsides that could happen plus the belief of good things happening?
I think part of it, James, I think part of it's understanding the context that we're putting this in. So if it's something, the whole type 1, type 2 decisions thing, right? I know you've had various guests talk about this before, but the decision that's easy to reverse versus the decision that when you're in it, you're in it.
Right.
Okay. If you drive into a cul-de-sac, how easily can you get back out? Okay. If it's an easily reversible decision, just make it. Literally just make it and get on with it. Doing something's better than not starting.
Yeah.
And you'll figure out whether it works or not. And if it's easy to reverse, cancel. If it's not a decision that means you're wedded to it for 5 years, 10 years longer, give it a go, right? I think where the whole catastrophe, fantasy, reality thing kicks in a lot more is the things that are harder to reverse. It's the things that when you make that decision, you're kind of committed to it for the long term. And I think if you're preempting, the outcome, do it in a way that's suitably pragmatic, and suitably objective. So.
That's random.
That's very random, but we probably have to go.
We go out.
Yeah.
That's never happened before. Suitably pragmatic, suitably objective. So back after fire alarm mid-podcast.
Yeah, I know. That's never happened before, is it?
No. I'd say one thing that I did get, though, from you in the first bit. You got a little bit of background in marketing, exceptionally passionate about it as well, and there's some incredible things that the audience can already apply. Now, you have made the decision to get into marketing and business in a big way. So when I say the word edutainment, what do you think?
Well, it's one of my favourite words, which, hey, it's part of my job title these days. So, it's good that it's one of my favourite words.
Content strategist and edutainment.
Yeah, but here's the thing for me about edutainment. In fact, let me tell you the first place I ever heard edutainment. Okay, and I believe it's the first place that word exists. It's a rap album by the band Boogie Down Productions.
You love music too, don't you?
Yeah, just a little bit. But that album by BDP came out when I was a teenager, when I was in a very impressionable time in my life. And there's like a little skit at the beginning of the album, but the first proper song on the album literally starts with the words, "Wake up! Take the pillow from your head and put a book in it." And I was like, what? I'd never heard a record that sounded like that before. And it went on to teach all kinds of different things in a very, very real perspective. You know, there's one song on that album called Love's Gonna Get You, and it's about when you fall in love with material things, the impact of it. And it's actually kind of a story of drug dealers and their demise, their rise and their demise, right? But it was such a powerful thing. And those words have always stuck with me. Like, education through entertainment. Because if you try and educate me and I don't enjoy it, how much am I going to learn? But if you can entertain me and I learn from the entertainment, awesome.
But where is the link in business then when it comes to edutainment and marketing and business growth?
It's really simple. All business needs some show business.
What do you mean?
What do I mean? Okay, let's think of loving it, right? Everyone can do that. Everyone knows that. We did it earlier. Moonpig.com. Like, we remember those things.
Lingos.
Yeah, but it's entertaining. It's entertaining. You know, think of a certain beer commercial. What's that? Right? There's things like that we just remember, and we connect things, right? We connect brands with experiences and feelings, and like when you buy something, you buy an emotion. And entertainment creates an emotion. And so you bring those two things together, you know, the way a business tells its story sells its product. This one's a cliche, right? But, you know, did Steve Jobs and Apple create the first MP3 player? No, they didn't. What Steve Jobs did was take this thing and instead of talking about bit rates and compression and, you know, storage capacities in megabytes or gigabytes or whatever, he went, 1,000 songs in your pocket. And everyone got it. It was simple and it was a story. 1,000 songs in your pocket is a story.
What's that, 6 or 7 words?
Yeah. You know, one of the most powerful and heartbreaking stories I've ever read. Baby shoes for sale, never worn.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. 6 words.
You know, it's like but we all get it instantly and we fill in the blanks. And the best stories do that, by the way. They let you fill in the blanks. That's why a lot of people resonate with a book more than they do a film. Because the way your imagination colours things in, it takes your experience and overlays it on something else. And if you want to create not just customers, but people that want to be customers and be associated with your brand kind of forever, that's what you have to do. Is create something where people go, I want this to be part of my identity. You know, again, real transparency on this. You use an iPhone, you use an iPad, you use a MacBook Pro. I've been in your home studio, right? It's just full of Apple kit. What's the chances of getting you to switch to Microsoft and Android?
Stuff it, isn't it?
But it's close to zero, right? To get you to do that. By the way, I
do love Bill Gates though, and he's an investor in Apple.
But you know, I'm not saying that one's better than the other. What I'm saying is people align themselves with one or the other, and then very few people actually change. Well, how do you do that with whatever your business is? How do you do that with your brand? How do you create something where people go, yeah, no, this is what I use, and I'm proud of it, and I'll tell everybody else I'm proud of it, and I want it, like, the brand becomes a fashion accessory. It becomes part of an identity. You know, car brands, same thing. There are some people who have driven the same car since their first car, and it would be hard to get them to change.
So for the business owners and marketing managers and directors and stuff that's listening, they want to apply this edutainment concept into their marketing to start attracting real results. Where do we start?
What's the stories that are out there already?
About your brand or about anything?
About your customer.
Get stories out.
Make it about them, not you. One of the biggest mistakes is making it about you. The more times you use the words we, I, us, the more disconnect you create. Unless the we is a community that includes the customer.
Yeah.
You know, if you've created a movement...
It's perceived on a different level.
Yeah, exactly. If you've created a movement and we is you and I, I can say we. If I say we here at and mention the business, no one cares. I don't buy your product because it makes you more money. I buy your product or your service because of what it does for me and my business or my life. I don't care about you. Now, it doesn't mean I can't grow to care about you if I know enough of your backstory. If I know why your product exists and I know the problem that you perceived and you solve, now maybe I care about you as well and I want you to do well. But too many businesses that have what I'm going to call a Me Too product make it about the business. The customer's not interested. Make it about them. Make it interesting.
Let's combine with something that you said earlier on, the whole vanity thing. So chasing fake success, really. Yep. So, where does this sort of marry up with edutainment? We don't want to chase fake success. It's got to be edutainment. How does the audience deal with that and process it to actually do something tangible?
So let's step backwards slightly. What is real success and what's fake success for you, or more specifically for your ideal client? If you sat down and you had a really deep, meaningful conversation with 4 or 5 of your perfect clients, why do you use us? Why do you use our product or our service? But what does that really mean? Like at an emotional level, right? And you kind of keep talking until you see them well up. When you get to that level, that's where the real story is. It's not the superficial thing. Now, if you're selling a 59 pence widget, there probably isn't an emotional connection. So it depends on the product.
It's more than a real story, that. It's real world evidence of they're your target customers.
Yeah. Well, let me put this a different way. In fact, I'll ask you a question on this one, James. How many business owners have you met that are not at like 7 figures yet with the business, where their goal is to become a millionaire or to have £1 million business?
Yeah, the fact of the matter, you look at the general business statistics in the UK, 5.5 million businesses, probably 3.3 of them are active. 70% of them are solopreneurs.
Yep.
So pretty much 7 in 10 are exactly what you've just said.
But they've got the goal to be a millionaire, right?
That's, well, I don't know. I mean, 98% of statistics are made up. We're about to make them up. It would be a lot, because that is a natural connotation, isn't it, for future success that people have.
Yep. But here's the real kicker on that. If you look at your bank account and you go, oh, and by the way, million pounds for most people is not liquid. So being a millionaire is, I've got assets that are worth that. It's not I've got the cash. Yeah. It's not I can go out and spend it, right? But even if it was cash in the bank is £1 million, the desire for that is not actually having that. It's having what you think that represents. And I think for every business, it's about understanding what is it that the desired outcome someone's working with you for, what does it represent for them? Not just what is the outcome. Because, hey, I've bought, again, let me give a very real example on this. When you buy a new car, James, how special does it feel the first time you drive it?
It's pretty cool, isn't it? You're happy, it's like, I kind of probably understand where you're going with it, but that first time, it's like, yes.
Yeah, when you've been driving that same car every day for like 18 months.
Wears off, doesn't it?
Yeah. By the way, quickest way to get that back, get the car professionally valeted. inside and out, detailed. Yeah. So it's got that new car smell and everything again.
Spend £100, get it valeted, you feel
like
brand new again.
Yeah, exactly. It's cheaper than changing your car because it gives you the same sort of feeling.
That is a good little sort of hack for the audience right now, isn't it? Valet your car. You'll get the dopamine hit of getting a new car each time.
Yeah, but it'll cost you a fraction of the money, right? But it's the big thing with this for everyone when it comes to marketing and sales, because those two things dovetail together these days anyway. When it comes to marketing and sales, what is the thing someone is chasing when they buy from you? And that's either something they desire or it's something they're running away from. It's either a pain they want to get rid of or it's some pleasure they want to gain. That is the only reason we do pretty much every single thing we do as human beings. So how do you fit in that? And if you understand that and you can tell stories around that, or you can create funny little skits, like it doesn't have to be funny, but if you can create funny little stories around that, funny little skits around that, interesting, educational, informative, you know, again, think about the TV. What do we watch? We watch dramas, we watch comedies, we watch documentaries. Some things teach us things, some things entertain us, but all of them have to be entertaining or we won't watch it to the end. You know, someone sitting there in a really, really dry and, you know, I'm going to use the word BBC voice, but it might not be the BBC, right? But you know what I mean by that. Someone in a really dry BBC voice just reading out a really boring set of statistics, everyone's going to switch off. But you give those same statistics to a different person and they put some personality into the way they deliver them, it's a game changer.
Well, I mean, is marketing about communication then?
100%.
What is communication?
What is communication? Not my phrase, this one, but true communication is the response you get. Most people think communication is what they put out. It's actually what you get back. But it's a two-way thing. And communication has changed massively in the last, 25 years. And yet it's still completely the same. It's changed completely and it's still completely the same.
So it's changed what, instead of like phoning people up, we text them type thing?
So what's changed is the delivery mechanism. But the actual communication is the same thing, because communication is an interaction between two human beings. And let's give a really simple example of that. I have no idea how many people are watching this or listening to this. It could be 1, it could be 10, it could be 10,000, it could be, you know, in the millions, right? But each person listening or watching this right now only has one person inside their head. So the thing that hasn't changed at all in communication is you're trying to connect with one person. What has changed is you're doing it en masse to potentially millions of people at the same time, right? And if we go back, I might get a bit nerdy with what I'm about to say, but I believe there are two key things that shifted the way communication takes place. The first one happened in the year 2000. And in the year 2000, here in the UK, we got Big Brother 2000. It became Big Brother, but it was Big Brother 2000, and there was Castaway 2000 at the same time, right? Two reality shows that were the first time we really, in detail, watched real life unfolding before our eyes.
Is that right? That was the year 2000,
That was the year 2000, yeah. That's when it launched, okay? So that's the first part. The second part was 2007. Because 2007 is when the first iPhone came out. And what the iPhone enabled us to do was take that thing that for the last 7 years we'd been paying loads of attention to, giving loads of attention to, which is reality TV. But with the iPhone, we could all become the broadcaster. So that barrier to putting stuff out disappeared.
That's where the emergence of Gary Vaynerchuk came. He was one of the first kind of broadcasters on there.
Yeah, I mean, he was doing stuff with video cameras onto YouTube, even like pre-iPhone, I think. But it's that shift of those two key things meant that, you know, a phone pre-iPhone, yeah, text messaging had started to happen, but really, most people still made phone calls, or a text was only a few words because it was tricky to do. You didn't have a full keyboard. You know, if you had a BlackBerry, you had a full keyboard, but most people didn't have BlackBerries. They had like a Nokia, and you'd have to like press the same key several times to get to the next letter and stuff, and it was a pain. The iPhone and other smartphones that kind of followed it, with the touch screen and everything else, gave us this brand new communication device in our pocket that let us shoot video, let us record voice messages, let us like send all kinds of things in ways we've never been able to send it before. And I think some people over time have got too obsessed with what the technology does and lost that core fundamental of this is one person talking to one person. You know, if I walk onto a stage to present something and there's 5,000 people in the audience, I still talk like I'm talking to one of them. Because it's one person listening to me. And again, I know some people go, oh, I've got more than one voice in my head, right? Some people got a committee, haven't they, right? You know, the monkey on the shoulder becomes the committee in the brain and it's arguing about, but it's still all you. It's still all you. How do you connect to that you? How do you connect to that one person? That's what communication is. And by the way, what you put out will be perceived by different people in different ways. You think police witness statements for a moment. Is there a reason they get more than one? Yes, because they're looking for the common ground. Because 15 people watching the same thing happen actually have 15 different experiences. Yeah, how many times have you sat down with like a family member or a friend or something, and you're recalling something from 10 years ago and you remember it completely differently, but you can agree on one or two things? It's that. And it's because depending on what was going on in their life at the time they experienced it, they've clung on to the bits that are relevant for them, right?
We have that in our household. I've got young kids, so let me tell you, when they're fighting with each other, they've got completely different experiences of the matter. So when I sat down talking to them, one's saying this experience, and another one is saying that.
Yeah.
So, which is a good example of communication, is the response that you get.
It's the response that you get. And actually, I think the other thing with kids is if you, and this is another cliche, but if you can't explain it to a child, you don't understand it.
That's an Einstein quote as well, isn't it?
I don't know where it comes from.
If you can't communicate something simply enough, you don't know it well enough.
Yeah. But, again, classic mistake of communication is people trying to look intelligent. The problem is when you try to look intelligent and you use words, phrases, acronyms that people don't understand, it doesn't make you look intelligent. It makes them feel stupid.
Becoming acutely aware there's cameras on me right now, so I'm doing everything in my human power and capability to not look intelligent in some way, shape and form. So there you go.
But it's true though, right? If you make it about you and making you look good, it disconnects.
It does, you're right. Being perceived as the expert is ego. And ego doesn't connect.
No.
Certainly not in the UK.
But the other thing about ego, right? If you break it down as an acronym, everybody's got one.
Yeah, and is it a bad thing?
No. We all need it. It's important. Like confidence and ego, one comes from the other to a large extent. I always think the balancing act is when it goes from confidence to arrogance. Like probably one of my biggest dislikes on this planet is arrogance. I don't like arrogant people, or arrogant behaviour, I should say. I don't believe any person's arrogant, but behaviour can be arrogant. Yeah. I don't like arrogant behaviour. I really don't like it. It really makes me uncomfortable. But I love confidence. And sometimes it's judging what the shift is between the two. And this is just my own personal opinion, but I think the difference is intention. Honestly, I think the difference is intention. And I think a lot of people who are arrogant actually are really lacking in confidence, but are trying to portray it. And so it's an overcompensation, and it's confidence exaggerated.
Yeah.
And when you exaggerate it, it becomes uncomfortable for everyone involved.
Overconfidence, underconfident, bad thing. Overconfident, bad thing. There's a balance point, yeah.
Yeah, and it goes back to the honesty thing. I am one of those things that not a lot of people know about me, but people close to me do. I'm my own worst critic, and I have been for pretty much my entire life. So I can do something amazing, and everyone tell me it's amazing, and I don't believe it. And it's because I'll be looking for how do I make it even better. Like I'm always pushing for that next level thing, right? You're looking for perfection, really, even though it doesn't exist. So I think there's that aspect of push forward, grow. But I have learned, particularly in recent years, to just go, thank you. Thank you. Because do you know what? There are things that I am really good at. But I don't like saying that because I think it comes across as arrogant. But deep down, I know it. But I think there's a difference between having confidence going, yeah, do you know what? I have got these skills. And yes, I know how to use them. And yes, I use them and I use them well. Versus how amazing am I and I'm better than all of you. Like, I'm not the best in the world at anything. I might be one of the best in the world at some things, but I'm not the best in the world at anything. There will always be someone who can do every single thing I do better than me, even if I haven't met them and even if I never meet them. They're still out there. And it's important to remember that. Because the minute you think you are everything, You know, you can do no wrong. You're infallible. You're the best in the world and everyone should listen to you, is also the moment you stop learning and the minute you stop growing. And if you ain't growing, you're dying. Again, it's a cliche, but it's true.
Now, who's Neil? What's the backstory here, Neil?
Where do you want me to start?
Start at the beginning. Where did you grow up?
So I was born and raised in Southampton. In fact,
Southampton fan?
yeah, unfortunately, based on the last season. I actually grew up with a family of dockers. So like my dad was in the docks, you know, uncle's in the docks, granddad in the docks. So I kind of grew up thinking I'll end up going into Southampton docks. And then sometime around 1983, roughly, my dad did what was called taking the money, which basically Southampton docks was going through like a massive redundancy thing and reorganisation. And if you took voluntary redundancy, you got more money. And the chances were you were going to get made redundant eventually anyway. So my dad took the money. And I can remember, even as a young kid, going, so what do I do when I grow up? Because whilst I had ideas of what I wanted to do when I grew up, I always figured I'd end up in the docks. It kind of didn't matter what it was I wanted to do. Most people around me were in the docks. I thought I'd end up in the docks. And I'm like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do then. And my dad started his own business. And I think that's where my kind of fire for business started, because I idolised my dad. Absolutely idolised my dad. And when he started his business, I'm like, oh, maybe I'll go and work for him or work with him, right? And by the time I was about 16, he'd built a pretty decent sized business. You know, he was doing work for PLCs. Like the business is growing and it's doing well. But let's put the landscape on that for a moment. This is the late 80s. Late 80s going into the early 90s. What happened in this country in the late 80s, early 90s? Deep recession. Twice in a short period of time. What did that do in terms of my dad's business? Well, he had a PLC go under, owing him a significant amount of money. You know, a six-figure sum, and back then 6 figures was probably 7 figures today in terms of the impact of it, right? He had another business go under, owing him a significant amount as well. Not a PLC, but two companies own him a lot of money, where he's already put a lot of expenditure into delivering projects that he's basically never going to get paid for. And he had a book of work that he went to the bank and said, look, I've got all this work. You can see I've got the numbers. I can trade through this. And if you loan me the money, I can it's here. And the bank didn't have the confidence. And so, in fact, let me give a bit more of this story. The stress of all of that, the impact of all of that from a family perspective, meant my dad was never at home. Yeah, he was at work or trying to deal with the pressures of work when he wasn't at work. And that led to the breakdown of the marriage between my mum and my dad. And so by the time I was, at the age of 16, my dad moved out, and he moved back in for a bit and he moved out again. By the time I was 18, my dad wasn't living with us. It was me, my mum and my older brother. And my dad got declared bankrupt because the bank wouldn't support him. He couldn't trade, even though he had the work to trade through, he couldn't trade through. And unfortunately, our family home was security on his loan, even though he didn't live there anymore. So quite literally at the age of 18, me and my mum and my brother were made homeless. Now that sounds more dramatic than it was in terms of we found somewhere else to live before we had to hand the keys over. But that period of trying to find somewhere to live was far from easy. You know, far from easy. The interesting thing with my dad, at the point where he was able to, he rebuilt and built another company. And this is, like, my passion for business coaching is going to make more sense in a moment than it's ever made to you. He managed to rebuild, and Christmas 1997 going into New Year 1998, I remember being sat round his dining table in his house, and at this point he's got a big house, nice house, you know, nice cars outside. The yacht was literally on order. You know, he's got everything lined up and it's working well. And he said, one of the companies, is a household name, I won't mention them, have made me an offer, and it was over £1 million. And he said, but the work we've got lined up, I know in a year's time, we'll be able to add a 0 to that. So I've turned it down. I got married in February of 1998. On the 5th of April, 1998, my dad died from cancer. And on our wedding day, we didn't even know he was sick. And my dad's business was completely dependent on him. So it was literally wound up. It was stopped. It was worth nothing. You know, my inheritance from my dad was, you can look through his wardrobe. If there's anything you want, you can have it. But that was about it. And if, you know, if you sat down with my dad at that Christmas and said to him, you know, if you accept that offer, you'd be setting your kids up, you'd be setting your family up. But if you don't accept it, you know, literally a couple of months from now, it's not going to be there. And nothing's going to be there. And everything you've been building for, you know, a decade plus will be gone. Yeah, obviously you'd have taken it. But the thing that you'll see, I'll see, every business coach listening to this will see, and probably most business owners listening to this or watching this will see, is so many businesses are dependent on one person. That when that one person goes, actually the business is gone. You know, when you retire, your business retires with you, and quite often when you retire, it ain't your choice. And so my passion for all of this comes from a really simple thing. I don't want any other family to go through what we did. Ever.
It's kind of common though, isn't it, that all of the dependence falls onto one person. And you don't know what's around the corner neither. You literally, you know, like your dad, he was diagnosed with cancer and he died in a very short period of time there, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, he'd actually had cancer 8 years prior. And after going for regular checkups and stuff, it got to the point where they're like, we don't even need to check you anymore. Because he had cancer of the kidney. They'd removed the kidney and all the cancer in an operation. There was no trace of it. But when it was back and it was everywhere. You know, and he found out it was back because he had pain in one of his legs. And it turns out the cancer was in his bones and had almost eaten through the bone in that leg. You know, by the time the first warning sign, it was already too late, basically. And yeah, they were trying to do things in the hospital. You know, they didn't immediately say, that's it, Mr. Martin. They were trying to, you know, to find a way to get him healthy and get him home. But it didn't happen. And you know, I've had so many conversations with people that either they're in that position of vulnerability or they've experienced that position of vulnerability.
How was that experience in life shaped who you've become?
Oh, massive. Massive in both positive and negative ways. You know, 22 years old, your dad dies from cancer at the age of 50, 6 weeks after you get married. How do you handle that? I can tell you, for me, badly. I didn't know how to handle life. My new wife didn't know how to handle me. You know, I literally had no idea how to show up. I had no idea how to be. I had feelings I didn't want to have. You know, I'd only really started to. I always idolised my dad, but the way his marriage with my mum ended, I hated him too. And I'd only really just started to reconcile some of that in my own head and get back to having the relationship I really wanted with my dad at the point where the relationship was gone. He was gone. And I'd say it took me at least a decade to even start to get acceptance of that. Because the only memories I could have of my dad were in a hospital bed fighting for his life. That's all I could see. You know, he'd had an emergency procedure and I'd see, I literally, I mean, I could close my eyes and see it now, walking into the recovery suite, and it's just a shadow of the man that I've idolised with wires coming out of him. You know, machines making all sorts of horrible noises. And it's like, that's not my dad, but it is my dad. And for years, that was literally all I could remember. That's all I could see. And actually, it was the big shift on this came at a Tony Robbins seminar. And he had us like eyes closed, visualization type stuff. And there was something in that made me remember other aspects of my dad in that same hospital bed. And the fact that, like, I've always had a fear of hospitals since I was a kid. I had suspected meningitis when I was 4 years old. Had to have a lumbar puncture and various other things. Was put in an isolation ward at 4, you know, and it messed with me. It did, you know, and so I'd always hated hospitals. And I can remember like occasions when I was there visiting my dad, and he was like, "I think you should probably go outside for this bit," because he was caring for me, not himself. You know, I can remember him cracking jokes. I mean, the day he had major surgery, he was in a lot of pain, and he asked the nurse if he could have more morphine. And then he said, "I promise I won't drive." You know, he had an epidural, and he nicknamed it his happy gerbil, right? You know, he was making light of the situation to make everybody else feel better, even though he must have known how dire it was. And I was able to start to remember those things at that personal development seminar that helped me to start to actually go, do you know what? It's not all as bad as you've remembered it. And what about all those good times when you were like, it all started to flood back, the good stuff. But it took me a long time. And in that long time, I went to some really, really dark places, James.
He's really good as Tony Robbins around, you know, especially people that have experienced a form of trauma in their life. But, you know, of A, getting over it, and then B, getting on with something that's purposeful, that's connected to your core, that you can grab hold of and take charge of the rest of your life with.
It's that different. I think it was Tony that I first heard this from, right? He said, everybody's life is one of two things. It's a warning or it's an example, and you get to choose.
Well, are you a warning and an example to the listeners?
Yeah,
right
I honestly believe I've been both. And having lived a big chunk of my life as a warning, like one of the things I say to myself every single morning is that I want to live today as an example. Like I literally, as part of my morning routine, is to remind myself of that. Now, does that mean I always get it right? Of course not. I'm human. You show me a human being that doesn't mess up sometimes, and I'll show you someone who lies. We all get stuff wrong. It doesn't matter how great you try. Like, perfect doesn't exist. It's an illusion. It's actually the lowest standard of all because you can never actually maintain it. But if you strive to do your best, you know, if you accept the fact you'll get some stuff wrong, but you have an intention of trying to do the right things for yourself and for other people, in fact, probably even more so for other people than for yourself, life gets better, you know. And yeah, you know, life will always throw you challenges, but it's what you do with them. It's a bit like that fire alarm going off. Yeah, what do you do when a fire alarm goes off? Do you want to stay in a building if it's on fire and burn with it? Or would you want to accept the fact that the thing you were doing you can't do anymore, and you better get out and do something different, and maybe you can come back in? Yeah, and whatever area of your life, be that, you know, a relationship, be that a business, are there times where the fire alarm's going off even if the fire hasn't got to you yet? Yes. Well, pay attention to it. You know, it's that whole, there's a tap on the shoulder before there's a punch in the face.
Yes, okay.
Right? And if you pay attention to the tap on the shoulder, it's much easier to deal with. If you wait until life literally punches you in the face, it's harder to deal with. If you ignore that as well, it's going to run you over in a lorry. Well, what point do you want to make a change? What point do you want to make a change?
Maybe constant changes as you get the taps, yeah? Little 1 degree changes as you...
Life changes constantly anyway. The question is, how aware of it are you?
I'm willing to adapt to what you're aware of.
Yeah, like there's an acronym. I didn't come up with this. I've used it a lot, but I didn't come up with this, right? First of all, it can either spell the word who or it can spell the word how, because it's the same 3 letters.
Yeah.
You decide which. This is either how you change your life or it's who you become. You decide. Either's the same, right? I'm going to go with the who approach. The W is willing. You've got to be willing to change. Because if you're not willing to change, guess what? You ain't going to change. If you fight against it, if you resist it, if you push back on the things life's telling you need to do something different with, you'll just keep getting the same result. And if you're on a downward spiral, it will get worse. It just will. The second bit is you've got to be honest. And we talked to this earlier in terms of like catastrophe and fantasy and realities in the middle. What's that? You've got to be honest about what your reality is right now. Comfortable or otherwise, what is the reality right now? And the more objective you can be about that, the better. By the way, you'll never be completely objective when it's about you. None of us are. But the more honest you can be, the better. And one of the things that I've found, like one of my biggest principles in life is rigorous self-honesty. Relentless self-honesty. And part of how I achieve that is by having a few people who I trust with everything, where I'm willing to tell them everything. So the things that are uncomfortable that I don't even want to see in myself, I'll share with someone I trust. Because if I can call myself out to them, I've got nowhere to hide. It makes it real. But that honesty is integral, right? So willingness, honesty, and the O is open-mindedness. If I think I've got all the answers already, where am I really going? Nowhere. You know, like it's a cliche that every day is a learning day, but every day is a learning day. Especially in a world that's evolving so rapidly. You know, technology, screens, AI, you know, electric this where it used to be petrol that. Like so many things are changing so fast. You know, I'm walking around right now with a device in my pocket that is more powerful than the device that put the man on the moon in the 60s.
It's crazy, isn't it, when you look at that?
Yeah, but what's the next 10 years look like? What's the next 20 years look like? Where are we going with this? You know, and if we look at things like AI agents and the fact that we can train an AI to be like a human and it costs us a fraction of what a human being costs to do the same job in a business. Now, is the technology 100% there yet? Probably not. But it's getting closer and closer to being able to replace people in certain jobs. But then you have to go, so what jobs are those people going to do? Because not everyone can do everything. Not everyone wants to do everything. You know, there's a capability thing, but there's also a desire thing. And no one wants to do everything. So, you know, there are things that maybe technology could take over, but someone loves it and that's their passion, in which case let them do it. You know, and on the flip side of that, there are things where, hang on a minute, or I rephrase it, there are people where if we get rid of all of the jobs that are most suited to those people's skills, whether they enjoy those roles or not, we've got to figure out what we're going to get them to do instead, right? Or give them the opportunity to figure out for themselves. You know, I again, we're going a bit, or got the potential to go deep on a few things here, but me personally, I love empowering other people to achieve things. I love empowering other people to live their life on their terms. But I think empower should be spelled in power. When you empower someone, it's because you put them in power as who they truly are.
Yeah, it's a nice little play with words there, and it, on an emotional level, I on a personal level, I get it as well. And you know, I feel in power, I feel in control, I feel autonomous.
Yep.
Everyone wants that, and I can see the experience that you've had in life, that you've told of your life story there, it's really had a positive impact on your mindset right now, from what I'm seeing.
Now, but it had to go down to come up, right? And anyone that's going through a hard time, regardless of what it is, regardless of what caused it, regardless of what that situation is and what it looks like for you, rock bottom makes a strong foundation. A trampoline doesn't. And what I mean by that is if you hit your bottom and you bounce back too quickly, that's not necessarily a good thing. Because, again, this is just my own experience. That's all I can share. Sometimes living in the pain, living in the discomfort, teaches you so much more than running away from it. And I had years where I ran away from it. I had years where I was trying to prove things to other people rather than reflecting on what things really meant to me.
And is that acceptance?
I think acceptance is a part of it. But I think the other part that's very much, there's two pieces to this. If acceptance is one hand, the other hand is courage. And it's where those two things intersect. Because too many people, again, this is my own opinion, right? That's all it is. It's my own opinion. But I believe too many people accept things that they shouldn't because it's easy. It's easier to have acceptance than it is to have courage to do something about things.
Yeah. Well, I get it. And actually, they're both colliding together, and coinciding with being willing, being honest, and being open-minded enough to look at the possibilities ahead and make some decisions. We've got some quick questions here to wrap up with, all right? So out of everything you've done in life, what are you most proud of?
I think the short answer is my kids. And I'm not always proud of the dad I've been. But I'm proud of my kids, and I'm proud of the relationship I have with them today. Yeah, I'm not, it's supposed to be a short answer, so I'm not going to go too deep on this, but I mentioned I've gone through some dark times, and my kids have seen some of that, and I wish they hadn't. But that makes me determined to show up better now. And honestly, like, my kids are everything. My kids are everything.
Yeah, well said. Look, I can feel the emotions, and I get it. If you could rewire one belief in marketeers around the world in their mind, what would you rewire?
Oh, that's a good question. One thing about marketing that I would change. What's the purpose of marketing? That's what I'd change. Because I think so many people think the purpose of marketing is to sell stuff. And it's not. The purpose of marketing is to start the conversation. The purpose of sales is to sell stuff. But you can't sell something to somebody if they're not talking to you.
Beautiful. What's the biggest myth about success?
Biggest myth about success? When I get it, I'll be happy.
It's a big one, guys.
You can be happy now. You don't need whatever it is you think is going to make you happy. And if you don't figure out how to get happy without it, you ain't getting happy with it.
What's one thing that most marketers do that kills results?
Oh, there's a long list.
What's near the top?
Inconsistency. It's, I think too many businesses, not necessarily just the marketers, but too many businesses go, what's that one thing, that silver bullet, that magic wand? Let's throw everything at that. But what happens in between those things, between those moonshots? It's those little things that are happening over and over again. And again, brand. What is brand? It's not your logos. It's not your fonts. It's not your colours. It's not your website. It's not your adverts. It's none of that. It's what people say when you're not in the room.
Your reputation.
Yeah, exactly.
What's the best advice you've ever had?
There's a lot of things I could answer with this. There's two that jump in my head, and I'm going to give you both of them. The first one is, what if you could change the words, why is this happening to me, to why is this happening for me? And the second one is, this too will pass. And this too will pass sounds overly simplistic. And I've got a friend of mine, good friend of mine, his name's Mike. I doubt he's listening, but if he is, Mike, hi, right? And there was a period in my life where I was really struggling with some things. And Mike kept saying to me every time I saw him, don't worry, Neil, this too will pass. Don't worry, Neil, this too will pass.
Some Buddhism philosophy.
But it did pass. And I was on a high and like, oh, this is amazing. He said, remember though, Neil, this too will pass. And I was like, you what? We want to hear it when times are bad. We don't want to hear it when times are good, but it's true always. The moment you're in is only a moment. And if you're struggling right now, in any area of your life, know that this moment's not going to last forever. But also, if you're on a high right now and things are going brilliantly, that moment's not going to last forever either. And it's back to that being honest about what life is and accepting that it's, you would never appreciate the highs without the lows. And guess what? The more highs you've had, the more the lows hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But you need that contrast to make either of them make sense. So accept the fact that that's just part of the journey.
What's the hardest lesson that you've had to learn in life?
That it's not about me.
Happens to us all, doesn't it? And if there should be a headline for this podcast, now we've done it, what do you reckon the headline should be?
What should the headline be?
Do you know what? The proximity is power to a degree. It's not about me. That could be...
Yeah, I mean, this episode's kind of been about me, but it's not about me. I think if I was going to try... I mean, I'd need to listen to everything we said, especially given we had a fire alarm in the middle, right? In fact, maybe that's it. Alarm bells. Are you listening?
Guys, did you see that? Did you go rewind and watch Neil's facial reactions as he's processing this? And he comes up with alarm bells. Are you listening? Beautiful. Love it. There's your creative marketing genius coming out. All right, so what's the first action that the listeners should take?
About what? Themselves, their business, their marketing?
Any of this. Let's go for themselves, the business and the marketing. First action on themselves.
First action on yourself. If you don't do it already, start writing a gratitude journal.
First action on the business.
First action on the business. Get honest. Sit down, look at where you really are and get a very clear outcome of where you want to be and understand what that gap is. Because all you need to do is close the gap. You don't have to create that outcome because you're already part way there. And so many, again, go back to I've got this business, but I want to be doing £1 million. Let's just use that as an example. You're doing 150,000 now and you want to be doing £1 million. So many people go, how do I create £1 million business? No. How do you close an £850,000 gap? It's not the same problem. And I think the more we understand that, like life in general, if you want an outcome you don't have, you're not starting from zero, you're starting from somewhere. And there's a gap. How do you close the gap? That's it.
First action for marketing.
First action for marketing, do some.
Consistently.
Do some and make sure it's not about you. It's about the customer and what the customer wants and how to give them value. If you don't give value up front, why should anyone give you value back? The value you want them to give you back is when they open their wallet. If you want them to open their wallet and give you value, as in pound notes, you have to give them value first, not wait until you get it. And I'm going to give a little bit of career advice on this one, right? Because it's an illustration of it. I've met a lot of people in my career, normally younger than me, who go, I want to earn X. And they've got a set of skills. And they're like, when I get a pay rise, I'm going to start doing X. And I'm like, start doing X now. And you'll prove that you're worth that pay rise and it will come. And especially young people that I see their careers move forward the fastest are the ones at whatever level they're at, they operate one level above, at least. Well, that applies to all of us. Whatever your customer expects as an experience, because by the way, if you're an employee, right, the company is your customer. They're buying your time. Just do that. Operate one level above what people expect or more and wow them with what they get, and they'll keep giving you more in exchange.
You know, my favourite part of this, we've covered loads of areas of business, loads of specifics, but two favourite parts is how quickly, with vulnerability, you went really emotional and personal around the story of your dad when you're 22, that 10 years afterwards. And then I asked you the question at the end, you know, what you're most proud of? Instantly, again, you went personal, emotional with your kids. That was my favourite bit. What's been your favourite part of the conversation?
Having watched 100 plus episodes of this podcast, to actually sit in this chair. You know?
Yeah.
It's just it's slightly surreal. It's slightly surreal, and I'm kind of looking forward to seeing the footage and going, oh my God, that's me.
Well, be proud of that. Your kids are going to be proud of that, that's for sure.
Thanks, James.
Neil Martin, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Starting your own business was an exciting time, wasn't it? The good days you had and the bad. You knew you'd have to work hard, but you did it for your future. Lately, though, you're missing out on the important things in life. Time seems to be slipping by. So make the change. Claim back your work-life balance and grow your business today. Visit actioncoach.co.uk